Today's exciting episode features a conversation with authors Stephen Mark Rainey and Katherine Kerestman. But before we get to the show, I want to tell you about the extension of the deadline for Our Shadowed Past Volume 2. Bob Issel is still accepting submissions. The deadline has been extended to October 20th, 2023, and you can write to Bob and ask him for the writer's guidelines, but basically Our Shadowed Past is a book compilation of memories shared by fans of Dark Shadows. Volume 1 is magnificent. It's now available on a Kindle version on Amazon. I highly encourage you to check that out, but you can write about topics such as when you began watching the show, were you influenced by the show? Did you watch it with family or friends? What was your favorite characters, storylines? Did you collect the merchandise, etc.? Basically memories of Dark Shadows. It's a whole compilation. It's fantastic, and he's doing a volume 2. So if you want to submit to it or you want to find out more and get the guidelines for submission, the email address you want to write to is bobubas, BOBUBAS 59 @gmail.com. BOBUBAS 59 @gmail.com. Night has fallen, and the time has come to experience terror at Collinwood, a podcast dedicated to the iconic Gothic television series Dark Shadows. Terror at Collinwood explores the hidden secrets within the sinister walls of the Collins estate. Hosted by two-time Rondo Award-winning television horror hostess Penny Dreadful, the podcast features interviews and in-depth discussions with fans and creators as they examine the cursed characters and supernatural storylines of that creepy classic, Dark Shadows. Beware the night and the restless dead who wail on Widow's Hill, and prepare yourself for terror at Collinwood, a Dark Shadows podcast. Available at terroratcollinwood.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, Seance, The I Ching, or wherever you get your scary podcasts. That glisten. There are spoilers here for those who listen. Welcome to Terror at Collinwood. I am your hostess, Danielle, aka Penny Dreadful, and I am very excited by my guests today. It's going to be a feline festival here we're going to have, because we're going to be talking about The Weird Cat, which is a new anthology edited by Katherine Kerestman and S. Joshi, and features more than 36 short stories, poems, and essays by classic and contemporary masters of horror, including my guests today, returning to the podcast, acclaimed authors and Dark Shadows fans, Katherine Kerestman and Stephen Mark Rainey. Welcome back to Terror at Collinwood. It's great to have you both back.
Well, thank you. And Fraser decided to join in.
Yes, special guest Fraser. That is so adorable. So you're familiar. Yes, yeah. For the audio listeners, the Mark has a delightful little friend perched on his shoulder, kind of leaning on your shoulder over your chest there.
He is my official writing assistant. I mean, anytime I'm at the computer trying to write, he's either this way or he lies across my lap with his paws up on the keyboard, which means I have to do a lot of editing of cat words.
Oh,
you know, H.P. Lovecraft wrote letters about how he would write with a cat lying on his forearm. He didn't want to move and disturb the cat.
Yeah, there we go. He may pop back up here. We shall see.
Yeah. Yeah, Lovecraft was definitely a big cat person
No, for
for
sure.
sure. Yeah. So, how have you both been? It's been but Catherine, I had on not too long ago for the 1840 episode we did with Amanda and Mark. It's been a while now, about a year maybe since you were on with
That
Rick Lay.
sounds right. But yeah, I'm really, really happy to come back. And I was telling you earlier that my wife and I have just moved back into my old childhood home. So I'm sitting in the room where I used to watch Dark Shadows every afternoon, at least as long as I was when we finally got cable and I was actually able to watch Dark Shadows in '69. But the TV was right there, and I was sitting right over here, and just
Watching the Leviathans,
scared by
right?
Barnabas and everything in this very room. So it just feels right.
Yeah, and it was the Leviathans that
It was, yeah. I know I've mentioned that before, but I didn't get to watch Dark Shadows regularly until like '69 because the only ABC affiliate here didn't carry it until we had cable, and then in '69 we got cable, so I was able to start watching Dark Shadows regularly, and here we are.
That's so cool. And Catherine, how have you been?
Fine, thank you. Enjoying the summer.
Yes, yeah. We're in the embers of summer now, in late August as of this recording. So we're heading into fall, which I think a lot of Dark Shadows fans that may be their favorite season.
Indeed.
The fall. So there's you both were involved in this new book that's coming out, and I want to hear all about it. It's called The Weird Cat, and in looking over the list of writers and poets in this book, I was just really blown away by the who's who here, the likes of H.P. Lovecraft, William Blake, William Butler Yeats, Lewis Carroll, Ambrose Bierce, Algernon Blackwood. The list goes on and on. So many great names. And Mark wrote a piece for it. Catherine, you edited this with S.T. Joshi, noted H.P. Lovecraft scholar as well. So tell me a little bit about this book. What is it all about? Clearly it's cat themed. So what's the deal with this?
Well, ST suggested, he's published a number of my works, and he suggested we do this project together. And he gave me license to invite whom I pleased. So I thought of my Dark Shadows pal, Mark Rainey. We don't know each other very well, but I've read all of his Dark Shadows works. And I was also looking for classic authors to join with our modern writers. And I did a lot of research, a lot of hours looking for little published works by these great names. Not the same thing you see all the time, like Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat, but you will probably read a lot of works by these great writers that you haven't read before, because they're the side Bs of the 45s, and really great stories. All the writers, the living writers anyways, and most of the dead ones, are cat lovers. No cats are the bad guys in our stories.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I guess cats have this reputation and folklore, stealing baby's breath and being witches' familiars and all of this. So it's cool that you have a heroic take on the cat
Well, I have an essay in this book also, which I presented at the Horror Writers Association, called Cats in the Occult, a Canthropology. It's about how cats today still suffer from their historic association with witches, from when the Pope in the Middle Ages said that all black cats were Satan incarnate, to thousands and thousands and thousands of cats being burned alive along with the witches in the Middle Ages. From the Malleus Maleficarum to the popular writers of the early 20th century, when the occult was the thing again, the cats have been stereotyped as evil and the familiars of evil witches. Most of the witches I've met who have non-human animal familiars have rescues, and those are their best friends, and they aren't out to steal babies' breaths or do any harm. So yes,
Right.
cats still suffer from that that
Yeah.
stereotype.
They're just out to stop you from writing
Yeah.
or getting
Yeah.
to your keyboard.
No, if you have to hold your hands up over him, that's ergonomically better.
Yeah. Don't walk on the keyboard.
Fraser just wants to
If I
help.
leave, it's because he probably walked on something.
So, Mark, what did you write for this? What was your piece about for this?
My story is called Nimbus, which is actually the name of the cat. And I started out thinking I wanted to do something related to Lovecraft's Dreamlands. I've done a number of stories that they're sort of a loose interpretation of Lovecraft's Dreamlands, but given Lovecraft's affinity for cats and my own affinity for cats, I wanted to do one that was emotionally powerful, something that really played on my personal fears, especially, of something happening to an animal I love, and literally the heroic nature of this animal. And so when I read it out loud to my wife, I always read something I've written. I always read it out loud to my wife because she's a great editor and helps me make sure that I haven't mucked up the works. But at the end of this story, she was in freaking tears, and I'm like, okay, it works.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
good tears, like wow kind of tears.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Wow.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see among the names Lewis Carroll. Like, I mean, I just did not. It didn't occur to me that it was that he would wrote a cat themed story. Was it or was it the Cheshire Cat? Was it like something
Cheshire
from?
Cat,
Oh,
yeah.
it was the Cheshire Cat. Okay, I was gonna say okay, because I hadn't heard of that. I love Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. So good choice there. What else can we expect from this book? Can you talk a little bit? Like where can we find it? Where is it? It's Amazon.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's been #1 on Amazon's in its pre-release in 2 categories: classic and anthology, and another anthology category, and #5 in horror as well.
Wow.
A lot of the authors are equally amazed as you to find themselves numbered among the great writers. And let's see, let me look at this table of contents. We have Ramsey Campbell.
Oh, yeah.
And Lord Dunsany.
Yeah.
Caitlin Kiernan.
Oh, yeah.
Rudyard Kipling on
Oh, yes.
the semi-domestication of the cat as opposed to other critters. And I've invited another Dark Shadows friend, Michael Potts. He's got a poem in there called Bad Cats. And when Alan Dean Foster heard about our project, his agent inquired if he could be in our book. And I was like, well, yes.
Wow, cool.
So it's generated a lot of excitement, even though it's still only on pre-order. It comes out on the 18th of October, but you can pre-order it through Amazon and perhaps Barnes & Noble too. I don't know if they're taking pre-orders, but it will be available there.
Okay,
so,
I will definitely.
And when I went to StokerCon and told people about my editorial debut with this book, I had all kinds of authors asking, could they be in it? But it was too late by that time.
That means a volume 2 has to come out.
Maybe so.
Yeah. Or maybe the dog anthology. Will there be? It would be cool to have a panel about this too at Necronomicon in Providence. I don't know if either one of you have ever been to that. It's every other year they have that.
Yeah, I have not. I would sure like to, but I tell you, it's hard to make travel plans these days because my wife and friends, we like to go on a big trip somewhere. We're going to Alaska in a few weeks.
Oh, wow.
So I have to sort of stagger cons
Yeah.
and things that I can get to on a regular basis. But I would love to hit Necronomicon sometime. I am going to plan to go to StokerCon next year. I've never been to Stoker.
Yeah. Cool.
I'll see you at Scares That Cares in
Yep.
Williamsburg too.
Yes, yes.
Oh, wow.
I'll be there. That's what is that March,
April.
April? Yeah.
So, but I have not had the opportunity yet to go to Providence for the Necronomicon. I have
Yeah.
been to Lovecraft sites in Providence,
Yeah.
but I am going to be at the HP Lovecraft Film Festival in Portland, Oregon in
Okay.
October. ST and I will be on a panel on Lovecraft and cats there. And we also will be throwing a launch party for our book.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Is ST a Dark Shadows fan, perchance?
No, unfortunately.
Uh,
But I met him through Dark Shadows because we have talked before about how Dark Shadows plots are based on the literary classics.
Yeah.
And when I read that the Leviathan storyline was based on the Call of Cthulhu and on the Dunwich Horror, I read Lovecraft for the first time. And of course, I've read all his stories many times since. But Dark Shadows brought me to Lovecraft, and through publishing Lovecraftian stories, I met Esty, and we developed our working relationship.
I see. Okay. And when I had you on, Mark, with Rick Lay, we talked about the Leviathans and we talked about the Lovecraft influence on the Leviathan storyline, but also Rick threw some Robert E. Howard in there, which I was really surprised. But that one I wasn't aware of, and he talked a bit about how Robert E. Howard, maybe they were Dan Curtis maybe had an anthology with some of those authors or something. I don't know.
Possibly. I mean, they borrowed from so much and clearly dug deep for many things. And then too, I think a lot of it of what they did just sort of grew naturally out of that source material they picked up. And sometimes I don't know how much they really borrowed and how much was coincidence, because they were cranking this stuff out just like boom, 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 to meet deadlines and all.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And some of that stuff was just, I mean, over the years, they may have just picked up on it from watching movies and things, but Dunwich Horror, I think, is clearly big
definitely
inspiration for Leviathan.
Yeah.
Speaking of being inspired and Dark Shadows being used, writers being inspired by different things, you are both writers who were inspired by Dark Shadows, and I know you both wanted to talk a little bit about how Dark Shadows has inspired you creatively over the years. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that from both of you.
I want to start. You want to start there?
Okay,
yeah, whoever wants to go. Yeah.
List here. Houses probably is the main thing. I'm really into houses. I love interior design. I'm just crazy about period rooms. My house is mostly 18th century French with some English library. And my bedroom looks like Josette's a little, in atmosphere, not exactly like it. So houses as living characters is very important to me. And also a lot of the horror tropes, the classic plots. I think those first came to me when I was just starting kindergarten through Dark Shadows. And then when I found, as with Lovecraft, when I found out about some of the antecedents, it took my reading in those directions. I tend to always look at the source material for the books I read. I go back further, but it all comes together within in Dark Shadows, bridging the old Gothic and the new cosmic weird horror. We have the classics Frankenstein and some Dracula in there, but the Woman in White, but that's changed mostly in Dark Shadows. It is no longer the good, bad, God, evil dichotomy. We have no one is a devout believer in God. And from the Radcliffean ghosts to the Leviathans and the old ones, all forces in Dark Shadows are the same. They're not lined up on the heaven and hell side. they're forces, and it all depends on the personality of the person wielding the force, whether it's for good or for evil. So, and then the last thing on Dark Shadows inspiration is about when I started writing. I have, degrees, some PhD courses toward an English doctorate, but it had been a long time since I wrote anything. And when I started writing again about 5 years ago, my first piece was my Gothic Interior, some Dark Shadows fan fiction that was published in Retro Fan. So Dark Shadows literature has really, really influenced my life.
Great. Fantastic. And how about you, Mark?
Well, I love that you brought up houses, because you talk about the interior. I always have had an affinity for various types of architecture, and the houses in Dark Shadows, from Seaview, particularly Lyndhurst, the Lockwood Matthews Mansion in Connecticut. These houses, to me, have their own personality, the character. And one of the things as a kid that I sort of took from my affinity for these things is that right out here in this neighborhood, which is an older neighborhood, it's not a modern subdivision or anything like that. This is a neighborhood that grew organically many years ago, early mid 20th century. And so there are some just gorgeous houses. And I remember as a kid, I would take walks through the neighborhood, and I still actually kind of like to do that and go, wow, that house right there reminds me of the old house. That one looks a little bit like a miniature version of Collinwood. And as I started writing, I started in the mid 80s writing, and got into writing professionally not long after. One of the things I've always focused very hard on is setting. And a lot of times the setting involves either houses themselves or landscapes, even towns. Like in the cat story, I actually did set it in Arkham. I hadn't originally meant to do that, but it just seemed inevitable once I actually got to writing it. So I went back and looked at a lot of old artist conceptions of Arkham, looked up passages where in Lovecraft, where there was some physical description. One of my absolute favorite descriptions of setting is the opening of the Dunwich Horror. Mm-hmm. There's this long paragraph that tells you about, when a traveler takes the wrong turn at Dean's Corners, and it goes into this just morbidly atmospheric description of Dunwich. That, certainly as a young writer, that really inspired me to focus on setting that serves as another character. The setting's not just a nameless background; it becomes an integral part of the writing. And I very much credit Dark Shadows with sort of sending me in that direction. Mm-hmm. And Lovecraft later.
Yeah.
Later.
Yeah. Then those images of houses of architecture are very also symbolic. That sort of Gothic metonymy. That's this means something more than what it is. That symbolic, ominous, brooding mansion. And the tragedy that takes place within that mansion. Another thing that Katherine mentioned that I really love is that, and it was similar for me in that Dark Shadows kind of led me to read all of these stories and novels that inspired the storylines in Dark Shadows. My uncle was a big fan of classic horror, so he introduced me to Dark Shadows and classic horror films as well from Universal and Hammer. But he also gave me a book of Poe stories, and Dark Shadows pulled some stuff from Poe, like The Cask of Amontillado and The Pit and the Pendulum, etc. But I wish more Dark Shadows fans would, look at Dark Shadows in that context, like look at the antecedents and the tapestry that Dark Shadows created from all of those things and reimagined in its own universe. Like Katherine said, the concept of good and evil in Dark Shadows, there's a lot of gray area with a lot of those characters too. Barnabas can be very heroic, but he can also be very villainous and dangerous too. Like he's an anti-hero. There's a mix of interesting qualities there with all of those characters. So it was a big innovation, I think, in terms of making those characters, the monsters, the protagonists of the series. That's how it developed over time, which is now I think a lot of people take that for granted when they watch genre television and things like that. There are a lot of shows where that's the case. So I do encourage Dark Shadows fans to kind of look at the overall picture in terms of the Gothic and Dark Shadows' place in that. Yeah.
A lot of other shows have riffed on Dark Shadows,
oh yeah.
Starting with Anne Rice. It's like the vampire who's a prisoner and telling his story, and it is reluctant vampires. So
right.
Talking about Hammer though, I recently bought part of a delicious liquidated collection of some rare horror DVDs and found a Hammer House of Horrors collection, and the name of one is Visitor from Beyond the Grave. Catherine Lee Scott's in there.
Yes. Yep.
Find her there. When I wrote my first book, which includes the Dark Shadows houses and a lot of other houses that I traveled, it's Creepy Cats Macabre Travels, and I love walking into those houses where these stories took place. Mm. But when I wrote that first book, she was kind enough to put it on her Facebook page too, and she recommended me to Jim Beard for his Running Home to Shadows. So she's been a really great help as I began a new writing career too.
Fantastic. Yeah. I've had her on the show before too. I got to bring her back on at some point, but she's going to be at Lyndhurst, speaking of Dark Shadows houses, in October with Marie Wallace. The two of them are doing an appearance there for, I think it's October 21st and 22nd, I want to say, of 2023. So if you go over to the Lyndhurst website, which I'll put a link to, you can register to attend that event, because it's I'm sure it's going to be really cool. Unfortunately, we don't have the Dark Shadows conventions, festivals happening anymore. So these kinds of things are sort of the next best thing, to that experience. So hopefully folks will go to that. And it's at Lyndhurst, which is really cool.
When I first wrote the first Dark Shadows novel that Beth Massey and I wrote, which was Dreams of the Dark, I knew it was going to be set in Collinwood that looked like Seaview, but at the same time, I had never been to Seaview yet, but I'm about to. But I so wanted to go to Lyndhurst. I've always loved that particular architecture. And so when I set about writing Dreams of the Dark, I figured, you know what? It's about an 8-hour drive to Lyndhurst. I'm going to go do it. So I went and spent a few days and wandered the grounds. It was... I got there actually it was the day before opening day in 1998, spring of 1998. So I literally had the grounds of the place to myself. There was another living human being. So talk about a transcendent experience. I wandered the woods, saw all the buildings, the house itself. I actually got a private tour of Lyndhurst from one of the ladies who was working there, and we got to talking about it. She goes, well, come on in and I'll take you to some of the spots that aren't usually on the tour. The only place in the house I didn't get to go up in was the tower, because it was under construction. It was under construction at the time for maintenance. But boy, I so love that. So a lot of the grounds, because you don't really, in the show, you never see that much of the grounds other than like still photos that they've that they incorporated. So my descriptions of the grounds were absolutely based on the geography of Lyndhurst, because it's such a beautiful, beautiful estate, and it really feels like what the grounds of Collinwood should feel like.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I like that you did sort of a hybrid there. That's really cool. I know Kenneth Bruce Bald, who illustrated the newspaper comic strip for Dark Shadows, he would sometimes combine certain things of both mansions in his artwork. So that was really cool too. And you also did when I had you on, we talked about Dreams of the Dark and also the Big Finish audios that you worked on as well. Are there any official Dark Shadows projects on the horizon that either one of you are involved in that you can talk about?
Not I.
Okay.
If anybody wants to invite me, please do.
Yeah. I had, I did 3 of the Big Finish audio dramas, and at the end of the 3rd one, they were going through some transitions with the company, and it was very, very hard to get paid, for one thing.
Oh, so, no, that's not cool.
I think things are a lot better on that count. I don't really know, but I've never really explored going back in there, since they have a certain continuity. I've listened to a lot of the Big Finish audios, but there's a lot I haven't heard either. So if a true opportunity arose to work in that again, I would. I definitely
yours
would,
was
but
definitely
I haven't actively pursued it. I have not pursued.
Yours were definitely some of my favorite ones.
Thank you.
I genuinely mean that. I really enjoyed the Big Finish audios, and some of the more recent ones. They haven't done them in a while. I feel like the tone has changed too much. It doesn't feel gothic and
that was my sense from a couple the more recent ones. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head which ones they were, but I absolutely agree.
Yeah, that mood.
I think I've listened to all of them, and I like the ones that are close to Dark Shadows, and there are many that have gone far, far from it.
Yeah, the tone feels off to me. It is great hearing the actors reprise their roles, don't get me wrong, but I'd like, if they bring it back, I hope they will kind of steer it back in that direction again. You also both contributed to Running Home to Shadows, which I really enjoyed a lot, and I'm really grateful that book exists. But there also are Shadowed Past, which I loved. And Mark, you did the design work on that, and then it was magnificent design on that. Yeah.
Thanks. Bob Issel had, he had asked if I would contribute a piece to it, and he sent me some mock-ups that he had done about the kind of look he was going for. And I said, well, my day job is doing graphic design, and I do pages. I said I can probably pop out some of these pages in half the time that it takes him to do a mock-up of the thing. So I put a few of the pages together and a few different styles and things to see what he might like. And before I knew it, I had been drafted to do the production work on it. But it was a big job. It turned out to be twice the book turned out to be twice the size he had originally anticipated. And he was hoping for a specific deadline. And I said, there's just no way, that I can get it quite by that deadline. But I did get it done a week later than that deadline, which by then this was all fairly informal as far as the schedule and everything goes. But I had a blast doing it. The only thing is I had to give my wrists a break for about a week after that, because man, it was intense. It was intensive work.
Yeah. Carpal tunnel. That
could
lead to that,
And in my day job, like I said, I was doing that 8 hours a day anyway.
Yeah. He's doing a volume 2 now. So the volume 1 is now available on Kindle. Yeah, which you can get on Amazon on Kindle, but there's a volume 2 that's being worked on now. So Bob is accepting submissions for that.
Yeah, I just turned in my essay to him, which actually involves the first Dark Shadows Fest that I went
that's
to,
a great
which
idea.
was right before Dreams of the Dark came out. It was the 1999 fest at the World Trade Center in New York. And part of the power of the memory of that was that, you know, it was the first time I had been to the World Trade Center, and I was just so grateful to have been able to go there and see it under such great circumstances before it was not possible.
Yeah. Catherine, I know you went to the festivals. You did cosplay at the last two. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's fair. I went to two of them. I wish I tried to get I've said it before, but on the podcast, I tried to go to the 2016 one, but it was sold out. And that was the last one they ever did.
I can't believe it's been so long. Let's have some more Dark Shadows Fest.
I know. Yeah. This year was, I think, the 57th anniversary. So it's not too far off for the 60th anniversary. So hopefully they will do another
Well,
festival.
y'all are old. I'm not old.
Maybe we can have a march on Lyndhurst or Seaview.
What's that?
Maybe we could have a march on Lyndhurst or Seaview.
There we go. There we go. Getting back to the cat theme a little bit, there was one cat on Dark Shadows that was a great performance by Joshua the cat that transformed Joshua. Does anybody know that cat's name? I've always wanted to know.
No.
Anybody, if anybody listening knows the name of the cat who was the transformed Joshua on Dark Shadows, let me know. I don't think that's ever been stated anywhere. I'm curious if that was like where that cat even came, or like it was, you know, who like Clarice Blackburn.
Who knows? Might have been a crew member's cat. You know,
right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, I wonder if that's the case.
The kitty cat was at home on the set.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. And if Joshua was going to be turned into a cat, that is exactly what he would look like. It was the perfect transformed cat, Joshua. The idea of when I had Mark B. Perry on here, who's working on the Dark Shadows reincarnation, although with the writer's strike right now, I don't think there's much progress on that front. But if that happens, one thing he dropped as a hint was the idea of doing a version of Cat People, which I thought was interesting because Dark Shadows never did the Val Lewton film, which if anybody hasn't ever seen Val Lewton's horror films, they're really quite fascinating and artistically done. They were contemporaries to the sort of the 1940s era Universal horror films, but the tone of those Val Lewton films was not as blood and thunder, I guess, as the Universal films. They were a little more subtle, and Cat People was definitely one of the better ones, I think.
Yeah. I haven't seen that one since I was a kid. I probably ought to avail myself to it.
Yeah. They remade it. There was a remake.
Yeah, in the was it
80s,
around 1980, I think, with Nastasia Kinski and Malcolm McDowell, which was quite a different type of film, you know, very, very graphic, bloody as hell. I enjoyed it, but the original is a classic. The later Cat People was entertaining in its way.
The Body Snatcher is another one. I Walked with a Zombie. That one I liked a lot too. Val Lewton's movies. Any closing thoughts? Any other thoughts you could either one of you have on in terms of Dark Shadows or this upcoming anthology? Anything else you want to add?
Well, I really appreciate being able to be a part of it, because it, you know, apart from the great company I'm keeping here, the opportunity to do a meaningful cat story. I think it's easy to do a joke cat story or a lighthearted cat story, but to do one that really drew on some pretty powerful nerves in here. I can't think of any other market that I would have ever been able to do that for. So for me, that was just a real joy, and I'm so glad that it was, you know, deemed worthy of being included. And I thank you for that, Kerestman and S too.
You're quite welcome. We loved your story. This book is written by people who respect the cat, respect the power, know that they know things we don't know. We respect cats for not being dogs. Alan Dean Foster sent me a cartoon, a cat and a dog before God on Judgment Day, and God asked the dog, "Have you been a good dog?" And he says, "Yes, I've been begging and I've been obedient." And he says, "What about you, cat?" And the cat says, "You're sitting in my chair." We respect cats for their independence. They are not our property. They have their own lives to live. They know things we don't know.
Mhm.
And they see a world we don't see. And they love us when they want to. They not because they have to.
Aw,
And they sit at the keyboard and
love
type
us
their own
too.
stories when you're trying to tell when you're.
These are the same reason some people hate cats. These are why we love cats.
Well, I love both cats and dogs, but I have a dog. But so don't judge. I will, maybe one day I'll do a dog episode of the podcast.
Well,
So
I'm just a critter person. I love animals in general. You know?
Oh, I love all animals too, just the cat the most.
it's your
Right.
favorite.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Definitely. Although some of these guys I'm about to throw up my hands with here. Because having moved into the newer place, we've only been settled here about a month, and the guys are still trying to establish their own boundaries and territories, and sometimes it gets pretty ugly in there.
Lysol.
But one thing I'd love to see, that just came to mind, Jim Beard, when he was on this podcast, said at one point he pitched a Dark Shadows anthology of short stories by different authors, and I thought that was a really cool idea. And they declined. I think it was Tor declined, and he said, Lara Parker could write the lead story in the book, etc. But they said that anthologies just in general don't sell very well, which is disappointing, because I think a Dark Shadows anthology with stories by authors such as yourselves would be really cool.
Yeah, well, James Aquilone just had a award-winning Kolchak anthology come out.
Yeah.
Another, originally a dark Dan Curtis property.
Yep.
And I had a story in the Kolchak book. So that thing, it sold well. Like I said, it won 3 awards: Stoker, Rondo, and something else. So I don't know. That tells me that there really could be a good market for a anthology of Dark Shadow stories. I'd sure like to see it happen.
Well, the Weird Cat is getting a big buzz before it's even out. So there are people who are looking for anthologies in their interest areas.
Yeah.
So
that proves that they, that there is interest in this kind of thing right there. So and I have no doubt that a Dark Shadows anthology, anchored by some key authors like the two of you, and hey, you never know, like Stephen King was a Dark Shadows fan, maybe. Never know. The late Anne Rice was a Dark Shadows fan too. So I mean, there are definitely writers out there who I think would be interested in contributing something to that. Rich Hanley, I bet he would throw a Charles Rutledge. There are several people that I think would be interested in contributing to that. Mark DeWitziak, he wrote a piece in one of the Kolchak anthologies as well, where Barnabas meets Kolchak, which was really cool.
Maybe I'll come up with my own proposal for the darn thing and pitch it.
Please do. If you want to see. Mm-hmm.
I just say I had also had that idea, but I didn't know if Dan Curtis Productions would be willing to.
They can be pretty dicey to deal with, in my experience.
That's what I heard. I've heard that before. So
yeah. Well, folks, if you're listening to this and you'd like to see a Dark Shadows anthology of short stories, make some noise, post about it in the comments on YouTube, or post in Facebook groups that you want to see these sorts of things. Unfortunately, I don't think the Dan Curtis folks are really active very much on social media. I don't know if they would see stuff like that. I don't know how the message could be conveyed to them. But I think if enough people want something like that, it'll get back to them.
Through a dream curse.
The dream curse, yes.
Dream curse.
Speaking of which, I want to do an episode about I found the novel that inspired the Dream Curse finally. And it's been in plain sight the entire time. It's called The Dreamers. So I want to do an episode about that. Ron Sproat pointed it out, that was the writer Ron Sproat from Dark Shadows had said so at the one of the Dark Shadows festivals. And I had been looking for a while, but Dan Silvio of Shadows of the Night, the old fanzine, he's very active on social media. He pointed me to that, so I was able to get a copy of that, and it was the inspiration for the Dream Curse. So I definitely want to do an episode on that novel at some point. But yeah. So anyway, sorry, I just went off on a tangent there.
It was a good tangent.
I get excited by these things. So it's great to see you both again. Thank you for taking the time to join me this afternoon to talk about The Weird Cat. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Can I throw in one more thing? A message to all the Barbie girls out there. In the December issue of Retro Fan magazine, I have an article on the history of Barbie.
Oh, cool. Okay. I haven't seen the new movie yet with Margot Robbie. Have you seen it? Is it any good?
No, I haven't seen it either.
Okay.
But mine is written to those who grew up on Barbie, the same cohort that grew up on Dark Shadows.
Okay. Oh, very cool. Well, congratulations.
59, and it goes to the present, but it's about, Barbie's always been generation ahead. She went to the moon before the astronauts did.
Yeah. And this is Retrofan in Retrofan magazine, you said?
The December issue. Yeah, she's all those social concerns people have now. Barbie's already dealt with them. Little black girls and little white girls played Barbie together in their party dresses in 1961 commercials. Barbie's always been progressive, and she's always been beautiful and wore cool clothes. So
they should make an Angelique Barbie. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, there are a lot of special interest Barbies. And Angelique, I don't know.
They did a Bewitched one, I think, at one point, didn't they? I think they did a Bewitched Barbie.
I want a Gothic series, Countess Barbie, the vampire, and I have a Barbie tied at the stake with kindling at her feet that I made for
I won't tell Angelique that. That's just I have somebody gave me as a gift my friend Mike as a gift gave me an I Love Lucy Barbie doll, which I have. Yeah, okay, cool. Retrofan. And Mark, do you have anything coming up?
I do. I've just finished editing a new anthology based on my old Deathrealm magazine. This one is called Deathrealm Spirits, and it's 20 stories is coming out from Shortwave Books. Actually, I believe the day before The Weird Cat. It's October 17th is the due date, and it's got quite a few well-known contemporary writers. We've got Joe Lansdale, Brian Keene, Elizabeth Massey, Jessica Salmonson, Maurice Broadus. Oh my God, I'd have to go through this. We've got a big list of very noteworthy contributors. And the stories are awesome. So that's coming out next month.
Awesome.
All right. Well, October, I should say. October.
And people can get this on Amazon?
It will be. Yeah. It'll be
Barnes and Noble.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, through Shortwave. It'll be ebook and trade paperback.
Okay, great. Well, keep your eyes out for all of these amazing things that both. Yeah, there we go. The Weird Cat. I will definitely put a link to that in the show notes. Wow, cool. I gotta get my hands on one of those too. I look forward to reading that. And please do check out The Weird Cat and keep up with Mark and Katherine. I will put links to both of their websites in the show notes so you can keep up with what they're doing. And I certainly look forward to the inevitable Dark Shadows anthology that's going to contain your short stories. That has to happen. I will will it into existence.
I love it.
So thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you.
And for as long as they lived, the dark shadows never truly vanished, for there will always be terror at Collinwood. Terror at Collinwood is a Penny Dreadful production.